Tom Bennett's hands shook as he gripped the swing chain, watching his 8-year-old son laugh in the December cold. Then he saw her. Rachel. Standing by the park entrance, in a coat that cost more than his monthly rent, staring at the boy she'd abandoned when he was 6 months old. Before Tom could move, before he could shield his son from the ghost of Christmas past, little Jake's swing flew too high. He slipped. And Rachel ran faster than Tom had ever seen her move, catching Jake before he hit the frozen ground. Jake looked up at the stranger's face, and his small voice cut through the winter air, with 2 words that would unravel 8 years of carefully constructed lies. I know. But what Jake knew would tear apart everything Tom believed about the woman he'd once loved, the marriage that fell apart, and the real reason Rachel disappeared on Christmas Eve 8 years ago. This is a story about sacrifice secrets and the devastating price of protection. Drop your city name in the comments if you're watching. Let me see how far this story travels. Tom Bennett hadn't cried in front of his son in 6 years. He'd learned to save his tears for the shower, for the drive home from Jake's school plays, for the quiet moments after tucking his boy into bed. But standing in Riverside Park on Christmas Eve, watching Rachel Martinez. No, she'd probably gone back to her maiden name. Catch their son mid-fall. Tom felt the hot sting behind his eyes and couldn't stop it. I'm okay, Jake was saying, his voice muffled against the stranger's expensive wool coat. You caught me really good. Rachel's arms trembled as she held him. Tom could see it from 15 feet away, the way her whole body shook like she was the one who'd almost hit the ground. Her perfectly styled hair had come loose, dark strands falling across her face, and when she looked down at Jake, her expression was raw in a way Tom hadn't seen in almost a decade. I've got him. Tom's voice came out harder than he intended. He moved forward, hands already reaching to take Jake back, to put distance between his son and the woman who'd walked away from them both. But Jake was staring at Rachel. His brown eyes, Rachel's eyes, though Tom had spent 8 years pretending they were his, were wide and focused with an intensity that made Tom's stomach drop. I know, Jake said quietly. Rachel went pale, actually pale, the color draining from her face like someone had pulled a plug. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Know what, buddy? Tom lifted Jake away from her, setting his son on his feet, but keeping one hand on his shoulder. You okay? Did you hit your head? I didn't hit anything. She caught me. Jake looked up at Tom, then back at Rachel. Dad, I know her. No, you don't. Tom's response was automatic, protective. You've never met this lady before. But I have. Jake's certainty was absolute, the way only an 8-year-old's certainty could be. I remember. Rachel made a sound, half sob, half gasp. She covered her mouth with one shaking hand, the other still pressed against her chest, like she was trying to hold her heart inside her body. Jake, thank this nice lady for catching you, and let's go. Tom was already turning, already trying to walk away, but Jake planted his feet. Her name's Rachel. Jake tilted his head, studying her. And she smells like vanilla. She always smelled like vanilla. The world tilted. Tom's hand tightened on Jake's shoulder, too tight he realized, and forced himself to loosen his grip. How do you... May I? Rachel's voice cracked. May I speak with him, just for a moment? Absolutely not. Tom positioned himself between them. You lost that right when you... When I... what? Rachel's eyes finally met his, and Tom saw something there he hadn't expected. Not shame, not guilt. Fear. Raw, desperate fear. When I left to protect him. Protect him? Tom's laugh was bitter. Is that what you're calling it now? Dad, my hands are cold. Jake wiggled his fingers. I lost my gloves. Rachel was already pulling off her own gloves, leather lined with what looked like cashmere. Here. She knelt down, and Tom should have stopped her, should have grabbed Jake and run, but his feet wouldn't move. These might be a little big. Jake let her slip the gloves onto his hands. They swallowed his small fingers, but he smiled. They're warm, thank you. You're welcome, sweetheart. Rachel's voice broke completely on the last word. She stayed kneeling eye level with Jake, and Tom saw her hands clench into fists against her thighs. Do you really remember me? I remember your voice. Jake spoke with the matter-of-fact tone of childhood. You used to sing. About stars. Tom's breath caught. He'd never told Jake about the lullaby. Never hummed it, never mentioned it. The lullaby Rachel had sung during those first 6 months. The only 6 months before she'd vanished on Christmas Eve morning, leaving nothing but a note and a divorce petition. How could you possibly? Tom started. Little star in the sky so bright. Jake sang softly, watching over you through the night. Rachel stood abruptly, stumbling backward like she'd been shoved. Tears were streaming down her face now, mascara creating dark tracks. You weren't supposed to remember. Dr. Morrison said you wouldn't remember. Who the hell is Dr. Morrison? Tom moved forward, anger replacing shock. What did you do? I did what I had to do. Rachel wiped at her face, smearing the mascara worse. I did what any mother would do to protect her child. You're not his mother. The words came out cold and final. You gave up that title 8 years ago. I never wanted... Rachel's voice rose, then broke. She pressed both hands to her face, shoulders shaking. I never wanted to leave him. I never wanted to leave either of you. But you did. Tom picked Jake up, even though his son was getting too big for it. Jake wrapped his arms around Tom's neck, and Tom could feel his son's heart beating fast against his chest. You left a 6-month-old baby on Christmas Eve. You left a note that said you couldn't do this anymore. And you filed for divorce before New Year's. I had to. Rachel lowered her hands. Her face was a mess, but her eyes were steady now. Tom, I had to. And if you give me 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, I can explain. There's nothing to explain. There's everything to explain. Rachel glanced around the empty park. The sun was setting, painting the snow gold and pink, and the temperature was dropping fast. Please, not here. My office is 3 blocks away. It's warm, private. I have... She looked at Jake. I have hot chocolate. The good kind with the little marshmallows. I like marshmallows, Jake said quietly against Tom's neck. I know you do, baby. Rachel's voice was so soft Tom barely heard it. I know. Tom should have said no. Should have walked away. Taken Jake home to their tiny apartment, made their traditional Christmas Eve dinner of spaghetti and meatballs because it was Jake's favorite, and Tom couldn't afford a turkey. Should have tucked his son into bed with a story and pretended this encounter had never happened. But Jake had said, I know. Jake had sung the lullaby, and Rachel had said, protect. 10 minutes, Tom said. You get 10 minutes and then we're gone. And if you try anything, I won't. Rachel was already moving toward the park entrance. Thank you. God, Tom, thank you. They walked in silence. Rachel led them through streets Tom barely recognized, though he'd lived in this city his whole life. The buildings here were tall and glass, the kind of corporate towers where people made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Rachel stopped in front of one that stretched 40 stories into the darkening sky. You work here. Tom shifted Jake to his other hip. His son was heavy, solid, and real and safe. I own it. Rachel pushed through the revolving door. Or most of it. Hartwell Industries. We do medical research, pharmaceuticals, some technology development. The lobby was marble and chrome decorated with a massive Christmas tree that probably cost more than Tom's annual salary. A security guard started to approach, but Rachel waved him off. Evening, Ms. Martinez. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Last-minute business, Carlos. This is... She hesitated. Family. They're with me. The elevator ride was silent except for the quiet hum of machinery. Jake had his head on Tom's shoulder, but his eyes were open, watching Rachel with that same intense focus. Rachel stood as far from them as the elevator car allowed her back pressed against the wall, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The 40th floor was all glass and leather, a reception area that screamed money and power. Rachel's office was at the end of the hall doors, etched with R. Martinez, Chief Executive Officer. "Holy cow," Jake whispered as they entered. "Dad, look at all the windows." The view was spectacular. The entire city spread out below them, lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. But Tom wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at Rachel's desk at the photograph in a silver frame facing away from visitors. Rachel saw where his eyes had gone and turned it around. It was Jake. A recent photo, maybe from last month, taken at his school's fall festival. He was grinning, showing off the gap where he'd lost his 2 front teeth. "How did you—" Tom's voice was dangerous. "I've been watching." Rachel moved to a small refrigerator hidden in the wall paneling. "Not stalking, I swear. Just making sure you were both okay. Making sure he was happy." She pulled out a carton of milk. "I have cocoa packets in my desk, the expensive kind." "I don't want your expensive cocoa." Tom set Jake down on one of the leather couches. "I want answers. You said you could explain, so explain." Rachel made the hot chocolate anyway, her hands steady now despite the tears still drying on her face. She handed the mug to Jake with a small smile. "Careful, it's hot." "Thank you." Jake took it with both hands, settling back against the cushions. Rachel poured coffee for Tom and herself, then sat in the chair across from the couch. Not close. Carefully distant. "Do you remember when I was pregnant? How sick I was? You threw up every day for 7 months. Tom didn't touch his coffee. "The doctor said it was severe hyperemesis gravidarum." "It wasn't." Rachel wrapped her hands around her mug. "I mean, it was, but that wasn't the real problem. They found something else, during one of the ultrasounds." She looked at Jake, who was focused on his marshmallows, then back at Tom. "A genetic marker, rare, maybe 1 in 5 million births." "A genetic marker for what?" "A degenerative neurological condition." Rachel's voice was steady, clinical, like she was reading a report. "No name for it yet, it's too rare. But the progression is predictable. Symptoms start around age 3, tremors, coordination problems, speech difficulties. By age 6, most fine motor control is gone. By 8, her voice finally cracked. By 8, they're usually in a wheelchair. By 10, they need full-time care. By 12, stop." Tom held up a hand. He couldn't breathe. "Jake is 8. He's fine. He's healthy. He plays soccer, for Christ's sake." "I know." Rachel's smile was trembling but genuine. "I know he is, because of what I did." Jake was watching them now, hot chocolate forgotten. "Mom, are you talking about me?" The word hung in the air. Mom. Jake had never called anyone that before. Tom had discouraged it, unable to bear the thought of his son calling some future girlfriend Mom, while Rachel was out there somewhere alive and undeserving. But Rachel's face transformed. "Yes, baby. I'm talking about you. About how to keep you safe." "From what?" Jake set down his mug. "From getting very sick." Rachel's eyes never left Jake's face, like she was memorizing every detail. "When you were born, the doctors told me you had something wrong inside you. Something that would make you sick as you got older. But I found a doctor, Dr. Morrison, who said he might be able to fix it." "How?" Tom's mind was racing, trying to remember, trying to find any memory of Rachel mentioning this. "We never discussed any experimental treatments, never signed any papers." "Because you would have said no." Rachel turned to him. "You would have said it was too risky, too experimental, too dangerous. And you would have been right. The treatment had a 30% mortality rate. 30%, Tom. But without it, Jake had a 0% chance of a normal life. So you did it anyway." Tom's voice was flat. "You risked our son's life without telling me." "Our son was going to die anyway." Rachel's composure shattered. "Maybe not at 3 or 6 or 8, but by the time he was 12, he would have been gone. I couldn't—" She stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. "I couldn't just watch that happen. So, yes, I found Dr. Morrison. I underwent the treatment protocol myself first to make sure it was safe. On yourself. Tom stood too, anger and confusion, and something else, something that might have been understanding warring inside him. What are you talking about? The genetic marker wasn't just in Jake. It was in me too, dormant, but there. Rachel pressed her palms against the cold glass. Dr. Morrison's treatment could suppress it, essentially overwrite the faulty genetic code. But it required weekly sessions for 6 months, then monthly for a year, then quarterly forever. And during the initial 6 months, her voice dropped. During the initial 6 months, the patient has to be isolated from anyone who might trigger stress responses that could interfere with the neurological reprogramming. Tom's legs felt weak. He sat back down hard. You left to get treatment. I left to get treatment for both of us. Rachel turned around. Dr. Morrison could only take one patient at a time. He's not exactly FDA approved, so I went first to make sure it worked, to make sure it was safe. And then when I was stable, we started Jake. But he was 6 months old. You were gone for... Tom tried to do the math and couldn't. You've been gone for 8 years. Because it didn't work. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. The treatment worked for me. Perfectly. But Jake... She closed her eyes. He was too young. His brain was still developing. The treatment kept failing, kept having to be restarted. Dr. Morrison said we needed to try a different approach. Memory suppression. You suppressed his memories. Tom's voice rose. Of you. Of his own mother. Of the pain. Rachel opened her eyes and they were fierce now. Of the weekly treatments that hurt Tom. That hurt so badly he would cry until he couldn't breathe. Of the needles and the machines and the strange doctor in the underground clinic. I couldn't... She pressed a fist against her mouth. Breathed hard through her nose, continued. I couldn't bear for him to remember that. To associate his mother with pain. So I asked Dr. Morrison to suppress those memories. Just those. Not me. Never me. But he didn't remember you either, Tom said. He was too young when you left, before the treatment started. Exactly. Rachel nodded. And I thought it was better that way. Better for him to forget me entirely than to remember a mother who caused him pain, even if it was to save him. So I stayed away. I watched from a distance. I made sure you always had work. Made sure Jake's school had funding. Made sure you never had to worry about medical bills. Tom's mind was reeling. The construction contracts that had come through right when money was tightest. The full scholarship Jake had received to the better elementary school. The time Jake had broken his arm and the hospital had accidentally written off the entire bill. That was you, he said. All of it. All of it, Rachel confirmed. I couldn't be his mother, but I could make sure he had everything he needed. And I could make sure the treatment kept working. Dr. Morrison monitors him remotely. Nothing invasive, just basic health screenings that look like standard pediatric care. Jake's been in remission for 7 years, Tom. 7 years with no symptoms, no progression, no sign that the marker is active. He's healthy. He's going to stay healthy. Why come back now? Tom asked. Why risk him remembering? Because the treatment failed. Rachel's voice broke again. For me, the suppression therapy, it was never meant to be permanent. Dr. Morrison warned me. He said eventually the memories would resurface. Both Jake's and mine. The brain is too complex, too determined to hold on to itself. And 3 months ago, I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. My childhood, my mother, things I'd chosen to suppress because they were too painful. And if mine were coming back, Jake's would too, Tom finished. He looked at his son, who had been quietly listening to the entire conversation with the seriousness of a much older child. Is that why you've been having nightmares, buddy? Jake nodded slowly. I dream about a place that's very white and cold, and someone singing. And it hurts, but the singing makes it better. He looked at Rachel. That was you. You were singing to me. Rachel nodded, tears streaming freely now. Every single treatment. I was there. I held you and sang to you and told you I loved you, even though I knew you wouldn't remember. Even though I knew I was choosing to make you forget me. But I do remember. Jake stood up, crossing to stand in front of Rachel. He was small for 8, barely reaching her waist, but his voice was certain. I remember now, not all of it, not very much, but I remember the important parts. What parts? Rachel whispered. That you loved me. Jake reached up and took her hand. That you never wanted to leave. That you were trying to save me. He paused, thinking. Dad says love is doing hard things for people, even when it hurts. That's what you did. Right? Rachel dropped to her knees and pulled Jake into her arms, sobbing openly now. Right. That's exactly right, baby. God, I've missed you. I've missed you so much. Tom watched them, his emotions a tangled mess he couldn't begin to sort through. Anger that Rachel had made such a huge decision without him. Relief that Jake was healthy and would stay healthy. Grief for the years they'd all lost. Confusion about what came next. And underneath it all, the faintest, most fragile thread of hope. Jake pulled back from Rachel's embrace, looking serious. Are you done with your treatments? I am. Dr. Morrison says I'm stable. Forever, hopefully. And I'm done too. You're in remission, but you'll need quarterly checkups for the rest of your life just to be safe. Okay. Jake nodded, accepting this with the same equanimity he'd accepted the existence of Santa Claus and the eventual heat death of the universe when Tom had made the mistake of letting him watch a science documentary. So can you come home now? Rachel looked at Tom, question and plea in her eyes. Tom had approximately 6,000 questions. He was angry and hurt and overwhelmed. But looking at his son's hopeful face at the woman who'd sacrificed everything to save him, Tom found he could only ask one. Did you ever stop loving us? Not for a single second. Rachel said immediately. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Staying away was harder. Every day I wanted to come back. Every birthday, every Christmas, every ordinary Tuesday. But I couldn't risk Jake's health. Couldn't risk him remembering the pain and associating it with me. With us. I thought... Her voice dropped. I thought you were better off without me, both of you. We weren't, Tom said quietly. We managed. We survived. But we weren't better off. Rachel's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me. Tom reached out and pulled her to her feet. Apologize to him. He's the one who grew up without a mother. Rachel looked down at Jake, who was watching them both with those serious brown eyes. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry I left you. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your first day of school, or when you lost your first tooth, or when you learned to ride a bike. I'm sorry for all of it. It's okay, Jake said simply. You were saving me. Dad says that's what heroes do. I'm not a hero, Rachel protested. You are to me, Jake said. Then, with the devastating directness of childhood, Can I have a hug? Rachel hugged him again, and this time Tom saw the fierce protectiveness in the way she held their son. The way her hand cradled the back of his head, the way she breathed in the scent of his hair. This was a mother's love, he realized. It had never left. It had just been forced into hiding. The office was quiet, except for the sound of Rachel's quiet crying and Jake's soft reassurances. Such a strange reversal, the child comforting the parent. Tom stood apart, trying to process everything he'd learned in the last 30 minutes. Finally, Rachel released Jake and stood wiping her face with the back of her hand. I should let you go. It's Christmas Eve. You probably have plans. Spaghetti and meatballs, Jake announced. We always have spaghetti and meatballs on Christmas Eve because Dad can't afford turkey. Jake, Tom said, embarrassed. What? It's true. You said so last week when I asked why we never have turkey. Rachel's expression softened. What if... She hesitated, then continued. What if I made turkey this year? I have a place. Not far from here. Big enough for all of us. And I've been told I make an excellent turkey. You burned the Thanksgiving turkey, Tom said before he could stop himself. In 2016, the fire department had to come. I've learned a lot since 2016, Rachel said, and there was the ghost of a smile on her face. Including how to cook a turkey without setting off the smoke alarm. Can we, Dad? Jake was already bouncing with excitement. Please, I want to have Christmas with Mom. The word Mom was so casual, so natural, like Jake had been saving it his whole life just for this moment. Tom looked at his son's hopeful face, at Rachel's tentative expression, and felt the last of his anger dissolve into something more complex. This wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. There was too much hurt. Too many years of single parenthood. Too many nights he'd lain awake wondering where Rachel was and why she'd left. But it was a start. A fragile, uncertain start. Okay, Tom heard himself say. Okay, we'll come for Christmas Eve dinner. Rachel's smile was like the sun coming out. Really? Really, but I have conditions. The smile dimmed slightly. Of course. You tell me everything. Every detail about Jake's condition, his treatment, his prognosis. No more secrets. No more secrets, Rachel agreed immediately. And we take this slow. Jake might remember some things, but 8 years is a long time. He doesn't really know you. You don't really know him. We need to figure out what this looks like. He gestured vaguely between them. All of this. Slow. Rachel nodded. I can do slow. I've waited 8 years. I can wait as long as you need. And if at any point Jake wants to stop, if this is too much for him, we stop. No questions, no guilt trips. Agreed. Rachel turned to Jake. Is that okay with you, sweetheart? Taking things slow? Jake considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court judge. What does slow mean exactly? Like, can I call you Mom? Rachel's eyes filled with tears again. You can call me whatever you want. Then I'll call you Mom, Jake decided. Because that's what you are. Even if you've been gone, you're still my mom. Right, Dad? Tom swallowed hard against the lump in his throat. Right, buddy. She's still your mom. Rachel looked at Tom. Gratitude and something deeper. Something that might have been love or the memory of love or the possibility of love rediscovered in her expression. Thank you, she mouthed. Tom nodded. He wasn't ready to say you're welcome. Wasn't ready to say he understood or that it was okay or any of the things Rachel probably wanted to hear. But he was ready to try, for Jake, and maybe eventually for himself. So, Rachel said, pulling herself together with visible effort. Christmas Eve dinner, my place. Should I expect you around 6? We'll be there, Tom said. But Rachel, yeah. If you burn the turkey, we're ordering pizza. Rachel laughed, a real laugh breaking through the tears and tension. Deal. I'll even let Jake pick the toppings. As they rode the elevator back down to the street level, Jake chattering excitedly about Christmas and turkey, and finally having a mom. Like other kids, Tom felt the first stirrings of something he hadn't felt in 8 years' possibility. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. There would be hard conversations ahead, logistics to work out, trust to rebuild. But standing in Rachel's office watching her hold their son Tom had seen the truth: she had never stopped being a mother. She'd just been forced to mother from a distance, sacrificing her own happiness for Jake's survival. Was it the right choice? Tom still didn't know. But it had been a choice made from love, and that had to count for something. Outside, snow was starting to fall, fat white flakes that caught in Jake's hair as they walked back toward where Tom had parked his truck. Jake was wearing Rachel's gloves, too big and expensive but warm. Tom carried his son's coat because Jake claimed he was too hot even in the December cold. Dad, Jake said as Tom buckled him into his booster seat. Yeah, buddy. This is the best Christmas Eve ever. Tom looked at his son's happy face, thought about the impossible gift Rachel had given them both the truth and a chance at something new, and realized Jake was right. "Yeah," Tom said softly. "Yeah, I think it might be." The drive to Rachel's apartment took 20 minutes through streets decorated with lights and garland, past families hurrying home with last-minute gifts and groceries. Jake pressed his face against the window, fogging up the glass with his breath, then drawing shapes in the condensation. Tom gripped the steering wheel and tried not to think about the fact that he was driving toward his ex-wife's home on Christmas Eve, about to have dinner with a woman he'd spent 8 years trying to forget. Rachel lived in a building Tom had passed 1,000 times, but never entered, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors and the faint scent of expensive perfume lingering in the lobby. The doorman, an older man with kind eyes, greeted Rachel by name when they arrived. "Evening, Ms. Martinez. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, George. This is Tom and Jake. They'll be visiting regularly, so please add them to my approved guest list." George's eyebrows rose slightly, but his professional smile never wavered. "Of course, ma'am. Welcome, gentlemen." The elevator was smaller than the one in Rachel's office building, wood-paneled and intimate. Jake stood between them, still wearing those 2 big gloves, and the silence stretched until Tom couldn't stand it anymore. "You didn't have to tell him we'd be visiting regularly." Rachel kept her eyes on the glowing floor numbers. "I'm an optimist. Sue me." "Mom, are you really rich?" Jake asked with the bluntness only children could manage. "Jake," Tom warned, "it's fine." Rachel looked down at their son. "I did well for myself, yes. The company I built has been very successful." "Because of the doctor, the one who helped you." Rachel's expression tightened. "Dr. Morrison's treatment saved both our lives, but I built the company on my own. He's not part of it. He's very private. Prefers to work alone." "Do I have to see him again?" Jake's voice went small. "For the checkups?" "No, baby. Dr. Morrison retired last year. There's a new doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's wonderful. Very gentle. You'll like her." The elevator opened directly into Rachel's apartment. Not a hallway, not a shared landing, but straight into her home. Tom stepped out and felt his breath catch. The space was enormous, all windows and clean lines decorated simply but expensively. A real Christmas tree stood in the corner, at least 10 feet tall, covered in white lights and silver ornaments. "Holy cow!" Jake breathed, echoing his earlier reaction to her office. "I might have gone overboard with the tree," Rachel admitted. "I haven't decorated for Christmas in 8 years. I had some catching up to do." Tom walked to the windows while Rachel helped Jake out of his coat. The view stretched for miles, the city spread out like a blanket of stars. From up here, the problems on the ground seemed distant, manageable. From up here, you could almost believe everything would work out fine. "The turkey's already in the oven," Rachel said. "I put it in this morning before I went to the office. It should be ready in about an hour. I made stuffing and mashed potatoes and green beans. I wasn't sure what Jake liked, so I made everything." "Jake likes everything," Tom said. "He's not picky." "I'm picky about broccoli," Jake corrected, exploring the apartment with wide eyes. "And asparagus, and Brussels sprouts." "No vegetables that start with B or A," Rachel said seriously. "Got it." Tom watched her move around the kitchen, pulling out serving dishes and checking the turkey with practiced efficiency. She'd changed out of her expensive work clothes into jeans and a soft blue sweater, and with her hair pulled back in a ponytail, she looked almost like the woman he'd married. Almost, but not quite. There was a confidence now, a self-possession she hadn't had at 24 when they'd stood in front of a justice of the peace and promised forever. "Can I help?" Tom asked, because standing still felt wrong. "You can open the wine. Glasses are in the cabinet above the sink." They moved around each other, carefully maintaining distance, not quite comfortable, but not quite strangers either. Jake had found a pile of wrapped presents under the tree and was investigating them with barely contained excitement. "Those are for you," Rachel said without turning around. Jake's head whipped toward her. For me. Well, I've missed 8 Christmases. I had some catching up to do there too. Rachel, you didn't have to, Tom started. I wanted to. Let me do this, Tom. Please. There was something in her voice, a vulnerability that cut through his defenses. Tom poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Rachel. Their fingers touched briefly, and he felt the jolt of it, memory and electricity mixing. Thank you, Rachel said quietly. For being here. For letting me have this. I'm not sure I had much choice. Jake made up his mind. He's a lot like you, stubborn. He's a lot like you too, brave. Rachel's eyes met his over the rim of her wine glass. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. Every single day. But you did it anyway. That's what brave means. The timer on the oven beeped, breaking the moment. Rachel pulled out the turkey, and it was perfect golden brown and aromatic. Nothing like the charred disaster from 8 years ago. She transferred it to a platter while Tom helped Jake wash his hands, and then they were sitting at Rachel's dining table, the 3 of them together for the first time in 8 years. Rachel said a simple grace thanking God for second chances and family reunited. Jake added his own amendment, and thank you for making Mom good at cooking now. They ate, and it was awkward at first. Too many years of silence sitting at the table with them. But Jake was a bridge, asking questions that forced them to talk, to remember to smile despite themselves. Mom, what was I like when I was a baby? Rachel's face softened. You were colicky. You cried constantly for the first 3 months. The only thing that calmed you down was being held while walking. Your dad and I took turns pacing the apartment for hours every night. I remember that, Tom said. I walked so much I wore holes in 2 pairs of shoes. You were also a terrible sleeper, Rachel continued. You'd only nap if someone was holding you. I spent 6 months sitting on the couch with you, sleeping on my chest, afraid to move in case I woke you up. Did I smile a lot? All the time. Rachel's voice caught. You had this gummy smile that lit up your whole face. Your dad used to say you smiled with your entire body. I still do that, Jake said proudly. Mrs. Patterson says I'm the smiliest kid in 3rd grade. Mrs. Patterson's your teacher? Rachel asked, and Tom heard the hunger in her voice, the need to know everything she'd missed. Yeah, she's really nice. She lets us have extra recess on Fridays if we all finish our math homework. What's your favorite subject? Science. We're learning about the solar system. Did you know that Saturn's rings are made of ice and rock, and that Jupiter has a storm that's been going on for hundreds of years? Rachel listened with complete attention as Jake explained everything he'd learned about planets and stars, her eyes never leaving his face. Tom watched them and felt something shift in his chest, some wall he'd built starting to crack. After dinner, Jake opened his presents with the enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster. Rachel had bought him books and science kits and building sets, thoughtful gifts that showed she'd been paying attention even from a distance. The last present was a photo album, and when Jake opened it, Tom leaned over to look. It was full of pictures. Jake as a newborn, tiny and red-faced. Jake at 6 months, the last photo before Rachel left. And then Tom's breath caught pictures from the years after. Jake's first day of preschool taken from a distance. Jake at the park playing on the swings. Jake at his kindergarten graduation beaming in his little cap. You really were watching. Tom said something tight in his throat. Every moment I could. Rachel's hand rested on Jake's shoulder. I have thousands of pictures. I couldn't be there, but I needed to see him growing up. Needed to know he was okay. Jake turned the pages slowly, studying each image. You were always there. I just didn't know it. I'm sorry about that, baby. I'm so sorry. It's okay. Jake closed the album and hugged it to his chest. You're here now. That's what matters. But Tom wasn't sure it was that simple. Watching Jake with Rachel, seeing how easily his son had accepted her back into his life, Tom felt the weight of all those years alone. All those nights Jake had asked why he didn't have a mom like other kids. All the Mother's Day projects at school that Jake had made for his grandmother instead. All the times Tom had seen the loneliness in his son's eyes and known he couldn't fill that space no matter how hard he tried. Rachel must have seen something in his expression, because after Jake fell asleep on the couch, worn out from excitement and turkey, she poured them both more wine and sat down across from Tom. "You're angry." "I'm not angry." "You are. You have every right to be." Tom took a long drink of wine. "I'm not angry. I'm processing. There's a difference." "Talk to me, Tom, please. We can't move forward if you don't tell me what you're feeling." He looked at her, really looked at her, and suddenly 8 years of held-back words came pouring out. "You left a note, a 2-paragraph note that said you couldn't do this anymore, and then you were gone. Do you have any idea what that did to me? What it did to Jake?" "I know." "No, you don't know. You weren't there. You weren't there when Jake cried for his mama every night for 6 months. You weren't there when he started preschool and asked why all the other kids had moms and he didn't. You weren't there when he made Mother's Day cards and had to give them to my mother because he didn't have anyone else." Rachel's eyes were bright with tears. "Tom, I'm not finished. You weren't there when I worked double shifts to keep the lights on because suddenly I was paying for everything on one income. You weren't there when Jake got pneumonia, and I spent 3 days at the hospital holding his hand and praying he'd be okay. You weren't there when he learned to ride a bike and asked if you'd be proud of him." "I would have been," Rachel whispered. "I was. I saw the pictures." "Pictures aren't the same as being there." Tom's voice rose, and he immediately lowered it, conscious of Jake sleeping nearby. "Pictures aren't the same as showing up, as doing the work, as being a parent." "You're right." Rachel didn't look away, didn't make excuses. "You're absolutely right. I wasn't there and you did all of it alone, and it's not fair. None of it is fair. But you want me to just forgive you. Just accept that you had good reasons and move on." "No." Rachel shook her head. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. But I'm hoping—" Her voice broke. "I'm hoping you'll let me try to make up for some of it, not all of it. I can never give back those years. But maybe I can be here for the years ahead, if you'll let me." Tom stared into his wine glass. "Why now? You said your memories were coming back 3 months ago. Why wait until Christmas Eve to find us?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was scared. Scared you'd tell me to leave. Scared Jake wouldn't remember me or wouldn't want to know me. Scared I'd disrupted your lives for nothing. I must have driven past your apartment 100 times trying to work up the courage to knock on the door. And then today I was walking through the park trying to decide if I was going to do it. And there you were. There he was. And I couldn't walk away. Not again." "You caught him," Tom said quietly, "when he fell. Instinct. I saw him falling and my body just moved. I would have done anything to keep him safe." "You did do anything. That's the problem. You did everything alone, made every decision alone, carried it all alone. We were married, Rachel. We were supposed to be partners." "I know, but if I'd told you what I was planning, I would have said it was too dangerous. You're right about that. But maybe we could have found another way. Maybe we could have faced it together." There was no other way. Dr. Morrison was the only one working on this. His treatment was Jake's only chance. "But you didn't even give me the option to support you through it. You just left." Rachel stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. "You want to know the real reason I didn't tell you? The reason I couldn't?" "Yeah, I do." She turned back to face him, and her expression was raw. "Because I was falling apart, Tom. The pregnancy was destroying me, and then Jake was born, and he was so tiny and so sick, and the doctor said he had maybe 3 years before the symptoms started. 3 years to be a normal baby before everything went wrong. And I couldn't—" She pressed her hands to her face. "I couldn't be strong for both of us. Couldn't hold you together while I was barely holding myself together. So I made a choice. I chose to save our son, even if it meant losing you." Tom felt something crack inside him. You didn't have to lose me. Yes, I did. Because if I'd told you the truth, you would have tried to fix everything. That's who you are. You fix things. And this wasn't something you could fix. This was something I had to do alone in a clinic that wasn't exactly legal, with a doctor who would have disappeared the second anyone official came asking questions. I had to protect you from that. Had to protect Jake. So you protected us by leaving. Yes. Rachel's voice was fierce now. I protected you. And I'd do it again, Tom. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times because Jake is alive and healthy and happy. Look at him. She gestured to their son sleeping peacefully on the couch. He's perfect. He's everything we hoped he'd be. And yes, it cost us everything. Yes, I lost 8 years with him. With you. But he's alive. That's what matters. Tom stood and walked to the couch, looking down at Jake's sleeping face. His son's mouth was slightly open, one arm thrown over his head, the picture of contentment. He was alive. He was healthy. And he had been given that chance because Rachel had been willing to sacrifice everything. I need time, Tom said finally, not looking at Rachel. I need time to process all of this. To figure out what it means and how we move forward. I understand. And I need you to be honest with me. About everything. No more secrets, no more lies of omission. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, it has to be built on truth. I can do that. Tom turned to face her. Can you? Because you've spent 8 years keeping secrets. That's a hard habit to break. Rachel crossed the room until she was standing right in front of him. I can be honest, starting now. The truth is, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it because I loved you too much to drag you into the darkness with me. And I've spent 8 years building a company and making money and trying to fill the hole inside me, and nothing worked. Nothing made me happy. Because I wasn't with you and Jake. Tom's throat was tight. Rachel, I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking for anything except a chance. A chance to be Jake's mother. A chance to prove I can be trusted. A chance to maybe eventually earn your forgiveness. That's asking for a lot. I know, but I'm asking anyway. They stood there inches apart, and Tom felt the pull of her, the memory of everything they'd been to each other. He'd loved her once with everything he had planned a future with her, had imagined growing old together. And then she'd left, and he'd had to learn how to live without her, had to build a new life from the wreckage of the old one. Could he let her back in? Could he risk his heart again? Risk Jake's heart on the possibility that this time would be different? I should get Jake home, Tom said, stepping back. It's late. Something flickered in Rachel's eyes. Disappointment maybe, or resignation. But she just nodded. Of course. Let me help you get him to the car. Jake barely stirred as Tom picked him up, his son's head resting heavy on his shoulder. Rachel gathered Jake's new presents into a bag and rode the elevator down, with them helping Tom get everything situated in the truck, while Jake blinked sleepily from his booster seat. Bye, Mom, Jake mumbled. Thanks for Christmas. You're welcome, baby. Sweet dreams. Tom closed Jake's door and turned to Rachel. She stood on the sidewalk in her expensive jeans and soft sweater arms wrapped around herself against the cold, looking smaller somehow than she had upstairs. Thank you for dinner, Tom said. It was good. Really good. Thank you for coming. For giving me this chance. Rachel. Tom started, then stopped. There were too many words and not enough all at once. I'll call you, tomorrow. We'll figure out next steps. Okay, tomorrow. She reached out like she might touch his arm, then pulled back. Drive safe. Tom got in the truck and pulled away from the curb, watching in the rearview mirror, as Rachel stood alone on the sidewalk, one hand raised in farewell. She stayed there until he turned the corner and she disappeared from sight. Jake was fully asleep by the time they got home, and Tom carried him up 3 flights of stairs to their tiny apartment. He tucked his son into bed without changing his clothes, just pulled off his shoes, and covered him with blankets. Jake stirred enough to mumble something that sounded like "Best Christmas" before settling back into sleep. Tom sat on the edge of Jake's bed for a long time, watching his son breathe. Rachel was right about one thing. Jake was perfect, happy and healthy, and exactly what they'd hoped for when they decided to have a baby all those years ago. And he had that chance because Rachel had been willing to give up everything. But Tom had given up things too. Had given up the dream of a partner, of sharing the weight of parenthood, of having someone to laugh with at Jake's jokes and cry with over his scraped knees. Had given up the idea of ever trusting someone completely again. Could he get those things back? Could he trust Rachel not to leave again if things got hard? Tom's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Thank you again for tonight. I know it wasn't easy. Please tell Jake I'm so proud of him and I love him very much. And Tom, I'm sorry. For all of it. I hope someday you can believe that." Tom stared at the message for a long time before typing back. He had a good time. We'll talk tomorrow. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close. But it was a door left open, and maybe that was enough for now. Tom went to his own room and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. In his mind, he replayed the evening, Jake's joy at having a mother, Rachel's tears, the way she'd looked at their son, like he was the most precious thing in the world, which he was. They'd both sacrificed everything for Jake, just in different ways. The question was whether they could find their way back to each other, or if too much time had passed, too much damage been done. Tom didn't have the answer. All he knew was that tomorrow he'd wake up, make Jake breakfast, and start trying to figure out what came next. For tonight, it was enough that Jake was happy, that he'd gone to sleep with a smile on his face and the knowledge that he had a mother who loved him. Everything else could wait until morning. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. Christmas Day was coming, bringing with it all the promise and uncertainty of new beginnings. Christmas morning arrived with Jake jumping on Tom's bed at 6:30, still wearing yesterday's clothes and clutching the photo album Rachel had given him. "Dad, wake up, it's Christmas. Can we call Mom and tell her Merry Christmas?" Tom groaned and pulled a pillow over his head. "Buddy, it's not even 7. Mom's probably still asleep. But she said I could call anytime I wanted. She wrote her number in the front of the album." "See?" Tom lifted the pillow enough to see Jake holding the album open. Sure enough, Rachel's cell number was written in neat handwriting on the inside cover, along with the words, "Call me whenever you want. I'll always answer. Love, Mom." "Okay," Tom said, sitting up and rubbing his face. "Okay, you can call her. But if she doesn't answer, we're not calling back until at least 9. Deal?" "Deal." Jake climbed off the bed and ran to get Tom's phone from the kitchen counter. Tom followed more slowly, putting coffee on because there was no way he was facing this day without caffeine. He handed the phone to Jake and watched his son carefully dial the numbers, tongue poking out in concentration. The phone rang twice before Rachel answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Hello. Mom, Merry Christmas." There was a pause, and Tom could hear the emotion in Rachel's voice when she spoke again. "Merry Christmas, baby. Did you sleep well?" "Yeah, I dreamed about the planets and the turkey. Can we have leftover turkey for breakfast?" Rachel laughed, and the sound made something twist in Tom's chest. "I don't see why not. Is your dad there?" Jake looked at Tom. "She wants to talk to you." Tom took the phone, suddenly aware that he was standing in his kitchen in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, unshowered and unshaven. Not that Rachel could see him through the phone, but still. "Hey," he said. "Hey. I'm sorry I told him he could call, but I didn't think he'd actually do it this early. It's Christmas. Early is what kids do on Christmas." "I suppose so. I wouldn't know. I haven't had a child on Christmas morning since—" She stopped. "Sorry. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty." "I don't feel guilty. You're the one who should feel guilty." The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and Tom immediately regretted them. But Rachel just sighed. "You're right. I'm sorry. Again. I seem to be saying that a lot." Tom poured himself coffee and watched Jake examine his new science kit at the kitchen table. "Listen, about yesterday, I said some things that were completely true and fair. Maybe. But I also want you to know that I get it. I understand why you did what you did. I don't like it, and I'm still angry about it, but I understand." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Thank you. That means more than you know. Jake wants to see you again. Today, probably. I want to see him too, both of you. I have more leftovers than one person can eat in a week. You could come for lunch." Tom hesitated. 2 days in a row might be too much too fast. But Jake was already bouncing with excitement having heard Rachel's invitation, and Tom didn't have the heart to say no. "Lunch? But we're not staying all day." "Whatever you're comfortable with. Come whenever you want." After they hung up, Tom made Jake eat a proper breakfast before letting him play with his new presents. They opened the few gifts Tom had managed to buy: a soccer ball, some books, a puzzle. And Jake was appropriately excited about all of them, even though Tom knew they paled in comparison to what Rachel had given him. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Tom looked up from the breakfast dishes. "Sure, buddy." "Are you and Mom going to get married again?" Tom nearly dropped the plate he was washing. "What, no? I mean, we're not even together, Jake. We're just figuring out how to be friends." "But you were married before, and now Mom's back. Doesn't that mean you'll get married again?" "It doesn't work that way. Just because two people were married once doesn't mean they'll get married again." Jake frowned, clearly unsatisfied with this answer. "But you still love her, right?" "Jake." "Because she still loves you. She said so last night." Tom sat down at the table trying to figure out how to explain adult relationships to an 8-year-old. "Love is complicated. Mom and I have a lot of history, and not all of it is good. Even if we still have feelings for each other, that doesn't mean we should be together." "Why not?" "Because love isn't enough sometimes. You also need trust and partnership and—" Tom stopped. This was way too complicated for a Christmas morning conversation. "Look, buddy, your mom and I are going to do our best to be good parents to you. Together but separate. Does that make sense?" "Not really," Jake said honestly. "But okay." They arrived at Rachel's apartment just after noon, and this time Tom noticed things he'd been too overwhelmed to see the night before. The carefully chosen artwork on the walls. The bookshelf full of medical journals and business texts. The total absence of any personal photographs except the ones of Jake. Rachel had set out lunch at the kitchen counter, turkey sandwiches and salad and homemade cookies that Jake immediately gravitated toward. "1 cookie after you eat your sandwich," Rachel said automatically, and then stopped looking at Tom. "Sorry, I don't have the right to tell him what to eat." "No, it's fine," Tom said. "That's exactly what I would have said." They ate mostly in silence, Jake filling the gaps with chatter about his new science kit and his plans to build a model of the solar system. Rachel listened with complete attention, asking questions and offering encouragement, and Tom found himself watching her interact with their son. She was good at this, natural. Despite 8 years away, she knew how to talk to Jake, how to engage with him. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was all those hours of watching from a distance, learning his personality through photographs and careful observation. After lunch, Jake wanted to explore Rachel's apartment more thoroughly, and she let him trailing behind to make sure he didn't break anything expensive. Tom cleaned up the lunch dishes, feeling strange in her kitchen, but also oddly comfortable. "Dad, Mom has a piano. Can she teach me to play?" Tom and Rachel both appeared in the living room to find Jake standing in front of a baby grand piano, positioned near the windows. "I didn't know you played," Tom said. "I learned after—" Rachel caught herself. "I learned a few years ago. Needed something to do with my hands during the evenings." "Will you play something?" Jake asked. "Please." Rachel looked at Tom, seeking permission for something, though he wasn't sure what. He nodded, and she sat down at the piano bench. Jake immediately climbed up next to her, and after a moment's hesitation, Rachel began to play. It was a simple melody, something classical that Tom vaguely recognized. Her fingers moved confidently over the keys, and Jake watched with fascination. When she finished, Jake clapped enthusiastically. "That was so cool. Can you teach me?" "I could teach you some basics if your dad says it's okay." Both of them looked at Tom, and he felt the weight of the decision. Saying yes meant more time together, more opportunities for Jake to bond with Rachel, more chances for Tom to have to face his ex-wife, and all the complicated feelings she stirred up. "Yeah," he heard himself say. "Yeah, she can teach you." Rachel's smile was worth it, bright and genuine, and full of hope. "Really? Really? Maybe once a week we could come on Saturdays." "Saturdays would be perfect." Jake was already trying to pick out a tune on the keys, and Rachel gently guided his hands to the right positions, showing him how to play a simple scale. Tom watched from the doorway, arms crossed, trying to figure out what he was feeling. It looked like a family. Mother, father, child. The picture of normalcy he'd given up on years ago. But they weren't normal. They were broken pieces trying to figure out how to fit together again, and Tom wasn't sure it was possible. His phone rang, and he stepped away to answer it. His mother. "Merry Christmas, honey. How's Jake?" "He's good, Mom. Really good. Are you coming over later? I made your favorite pie." Tom had completely forgotten about the standing invitation to his parents' house for Christmas dinner. "Actually, something came up. We can't make it today." "Is everything okay?" Tom looked back at Rachel and Jake still sitting together at the piano. "Yeah, everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I'll explain later." After he hung up, Rachel caught his eye. "You had plans. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's fine. My parents will understand." "Will they?" Rachel stood, leaving Jake to experiment with the piano. "Tom, I need to ask you something. What have you told people about me, about why I left?" Tom felt his jaw tighten. "What was I supposed to tell them? I didn't know the truth." "So what did you say?" "That you couldn't handle being a mother, that you left. That's it." Rachel flinched. "So everyone thinks I abandoned you both for no reason?" "You did abandon us. The fact that you had reasons doesn't change that." "I know. When you start telling people I'm back, they're going to have questions. They're going to judge me." "Yeah, probably." "And you're going to let them." Tom stared at her. "What do you want me to do?" "Rachel, lie. Tell everyone you had a great reason for leaving, even though I can't explain what that reason was." "No, Rachel ran a hand through her hair. "I don't know what I want. I want the last 8 years to not have happened. I want people to understand. I want Jake to have a mother without everyone whispering about her behind her back." "Then tell them the truth." "I can't. Dr. Morrison made me sign non-disclosure agreements. The treatment was experimental, not FDA approved. If word got out, then I guess you're stuck being the bad guy," Tom said. "I'm sorry, Rachel, but you made these choices. You don't get to control how people react to them." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I just wish—" She wiped at her face. "I wish I could make people understand that I did it for him. That every choice, no matter how terrible, was about saving our son." "Mom, why are you crying?" Jake had stopped playing and was looking at them with concern. "I'm okay, baby." Rachel forced a smile. "Just being silly. Do you want to try playing with both hands?" But Jake was too perceptive to be distracted. "Are you and Dad fighting?" "We're not fighting," Tom said. "We're just talking about grown-up stuff." "It looks like fighting." Tom exchanged a glance with Rachel and saw his own frustration mirrored in her expression. They were going to have to figure out how to disagree without Jake thinking his newly reunited parents were falling apart. "You know what?" Rachel said. "Your dad's right. We were starting to argue, and that's not fair to you. I'm sorry." "I'm sorry too," Tom added, even though he wasn't entirely sure what he was apologizing for. "How about we all take a break? Jake, want to go look at the science kit you brought?" They spent the rest of the afternoon in careful détente, avoiding controversial topics and focusing on Jake. They helped him start building a model of Saturn with its rings made of painted foam. They played a board game Rachel had bought years ago and never opened. They made hot chocolate with excessive marshmallows and watched a Christmas movie on Rachel's enormous television. By 5 o'clock, Tom could see Jake starting to fade the excitement of 2 big days catching up with him. "We should go," Tom said. "You've got school on Monday, buddy, and you need to get back on schedule." "Do we have to?" Jake's protest was half-hearted, undermined by a huge yawn. "Yes, we have to. Say goodbye to your mom." Jake hugged Rachel tightly, and Tom saw her close her eyes, breathing in the scent of their son's hair like she was trying to memorize it. "Can I come back on Saturday for piano lessons?" "Absolutely. I'll be here waiting." "And can we have dinner again soon? All 3 of us?" Rachel looked at Tom, question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. "Sure, we can do that." In the elevator, Jake leaned heavily against Tom's side. "Dad?" "Yeah. I'm glad Mom's back, even if you guys are weird with each other." Tom couldn't help but smile. "We're not weird, we're adjusting." That's what weird means when you're a grown-up. Out of the mouths of babes, Tom thought. Jake was absolutely right. They were weird with each other, and probably would be for a long time. The drive home was quiet, Jake dozing in the back seat. Tom's mind was racing, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning, he'd been a single father with a simple life and a carefully controlled routine. Now he was navigating shared custody with an ex-wife who'd returned from the dead, metaphorically speaking, and trying to figure out if he could ever trust her again. His phone buzzed with a text. "Rachel. Thank you for today, for trusting me with him. I know it's hard." Tom typed back, "Saturday at 10 for piano lessons. Don't be late." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I won't. I promise." Tom stared at that word. Promise. Rachel had broken plenty of promises. The marriage vows they'd exchanged. The unspoken promise to face life together. The promise that she'd always be there for their son. But she'd kept other promises too. The promise to save Jake's life no matter the cost. The promise to watch over them from a distance. The promise to come back when she could. Maybe trust wasn't about believing someone would never break a promise. Maybe it was about believing they'd do their best to keep it and understanding when they fell short. That night, after Jake was asleep, Tom sat at his kitchen table with a beer and thought about his conversation with his mother. He'd have to tell her eventually. Tell all of them, his parents, his sister, his friends, that Rachel was back. And they'd have questions he couldn't answer and judgments he couldn't prevent. His phone rang. Rachel again. "Is something wrong?" Tom answered immediately, worried. "No, nothing's wrong. I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about what you said earlier. About me being the bad guy." "Rachel, it's late. I know, I'm sorry. But I need you to understand something. I don't care what other people think of me. Let them judge. Let them whisper. But Jake..." Her voice broke. "I don't want him to be ashamed of me. I don't want him to hear people say his mother abandoned him." "Then you're going to have to give me something to tell them. Some version of the truth that explains without exposing your doctor's secrets." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "What if I said I had a medical condition that I needed treatment I could only get by leaving, and I didn't want to worry you and Jake with the details? That's pretty close to the truth." "It is the truth, just edited." Tom took a long drink of beer. "Fine, that's what I'll tell people. You had a medical condition, you needed treatment, you're better now." "Thank you. Tom, I mean it. Thank you for protecting me when I don't deserve it." "I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting Jake. If people think badly of you, it reflects on him. He doesn't deserve that." "No, he doesn't." Rachel's voice was soft. He's such a good kid. You did an amazing job raising him." "We did an amazing job," Tom corrected. "Tom, you might not have been there physically, but your money kept us afloat. Your scholarships kept him in good schools. Whether I like it or not, you were part of raising him." "That's generous of you to say." "It's not generous, it's true." Tom rubbed his eyes, suddenly exhausted. "Look, we're both tired. Get some sleep. We'll talk more on Saturday." "Saturday, right." "Tom?" "Yeah?" "I really am sorry, for all of it. I know I keep saying it, but I need you to know I mean it." "I know you do. Good night, Rachel." "Good night." Tom hung up and sat in the quiet of his apartment, listening to the sounds of the building settling around him. Somewhere above, someone was walking around. Below, a television murmured. Through the walls, a baby cried briefly before being soothed. Normal sounds. Normal life. But his life wasn't normal anymore, and it never would be again. Rachel was back, and with her came all the complexity and possibility he'd thought he'd left behind. The question was whether he was ready for it, whether he could open himself up to the risk of being hurt again, whether he could let Rachel back into their lives fully, or if he'd spend the rest of his life keeping her at arm's length, letting her be Jake's mother, but never again his partner. Tom didn't have the answer. All he knew was that Jake was happy, truly happy in a way Tom hadn't seen in years. And for now, that had to be enough. He finished his beer and went to check on Jake one more time before bed. His son was sprawled across his mattress, still clutching the photo album Rachel had given him. Tom carefully extracted it from Jake's grip and set it on the nightstand, then pulled the covers up over his son's shoulders. "Love you, buddy," Tom whispered. Jake stirred slightly, murmuring something that might have been, "Love you too," before settling back into sleep. Tom stood there for a moment, watching his son dream, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a blanket. Whatever happened with Rachel, whatever complicated emotions he had to work through, his priority was Jake. Making sure Jake was happy, healthy, and secure. Everything else was secondary. Even his own broken heart. Saturday morning came faster than Tom expected, and Jake was up before dawn, already dressed and waiting by the door with his backpack. "Buddy, we're not leaving for 3 more hours." "But what if we're late? Mom said 10 o'clock. We can't be late for my first piano lesson." Tom poured coffee and tried not to think about how Jake had started calling Rachel Mom without any hesitation, as if the 8 years of absence had never happened. For Jake, maybe they hadn't. Children were resilient like that, able to accept and move forward in ways adults couldn't manage. "We won't be late, I promise. Now go eat some breakfast before you vibrate through the floor." They arrived at Rachel's building at exactly 10 o'clock, and Jake practically ran to the elevator. Tom followed more slowly, carrying the science project Jake wanted to show Rachel. George the doorman waved them through with a knowing smile that made Tom feel exposed, like his entire complicated situation was written on his face for anyone to read. Rachel answered the door in jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger like this, more like the woman Tom had married. Before the CEO polish, before the expensive clothes, before everything fell apart. "Right on time," she said, stepping aside to let them in. "I made cinnamon rolls. They're still warm." Jake hugged her briefly before making a beeline for the kitchen. Tom hung back, suddenly awkward. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. Besides, I remembered they were your favorite." They were. Tom had forgotten he'd ever told her that back when they were young and in love, and sharing all their favorite things like they were precious secrets. Over cinnamon rolls, Rachel asked Jake about his week at school. He told her about the math test he'd aced, and the fight 2 kids had gotten into at recess, and how his friend Marcus had brought in a turtle for show and tell. A turtle. What kind? A box turtle. It was really cool. Marcus said we could get one if we wanted, but Dad said we don't have room for pets. Rachel glanced at Tom. "That's true. Pets need space." "But you have space," Jake pointed out with 8-year-old logic. "You could get a turtle, or a dog, or a cat." Do you like cats? I do like cats, Rachel said carefully. But I travel sometimes for work, so it wouldn't be fair to have a pet I couldn't take care of properly. You could get a fish. Fish are easy. Maybe, Rachel said, smiling. I'll think about it. After breakfast, Rachel led Jake to the piano. Tom settled on the couch with his phone, trying to give them space while still being present. He could hear Rachel explaining the basics, where middle C was how to count beats, proper hand position. Jake listened intently, stumbling through simple exercises with concentration. Tom's phone buzzed. His sister Laura. Mom says Rachel's back. Is that true? Tom stepped into Rachel's bedroom for privacy, closing the door behind him. Yeah, it's true. What the hell, Tom? When were you going to tell the family? I'm telling you now. It's been a week. A week. And you didn't think we deserved to know that Jake's mother just reappeared. It's been 4 days, not a week, and I needed time to process it before dealing with everyone's opinions. Laura was quiet for a moment. Is she staying? Or is this just a visit? She lives here. She's been here for years, apparently. She never left the city. She's been here the whole time. Laura's voice rose. Tom, what the hell? She had reasons. Medical reasons. It's complicated. I bet it is. Does Jake know? Have you told him who she is? He figured it out on his own. He remembers her somehow, even though he was only 6 months old when she left. And how do you feel about all this? Tom looked around Rachel's bedroom, taking in details he hadn't noticed before. The bed was neatly made with expensive linens. The closet door was slightly open, revealing rows of suits and dresses. On the nightstand was a worn paperback, the same mystery novel Tom remembered her reading 9 years ago before Jake was born. She'd kept it all this time. I don't know how I feel, Tom admitted. Angry, relieved, confused, all of it at once. Do you still love her? Laura. It's a simple question. It's really not. Tom sat on the edge of Rachel's bed, phone pressed to his ear. I loved who she was. I don't know who she is now. Then figure it out, for Jake's sake. That kid deserves parents who have their shit together. After he hung up, Tom stayed in Rachel's bedroom for a few more minutes, trying to collect himself. Through the door, he could hear piano notes, some correct, some not, and Rachel's patient voice guiding Jake through the mistakes. When he emerged, Jake was playing a simplified version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with both hands. It was halting and imperfect, but recognizable. Dad, listen, I can play a real song. That's great, buddy. You're a natural. Rachel looked up, and Tom saw pride in her expression. The same pride he'd felt when Jake had taken his first steps, said his first words, scored his first soccer goal. She'd missed all those moments, but she was here for this one. He really is good, Rachel said. He has a good ear. That's harder to teach than technique. They spent another hour at the piano before Jake's attention started to wander. Rachel suggested they order lunch, and Tom found himself agreeing even though he'd planned to leave by noon. They ordered Chinese food and ate at Rachel's kitchen counter while Jake chattered about wanting to be an astronaut pianist when he grew up. You can be anything you want, Rachel said, as long as you work hard and don't give up. Is that what you did to become a CEO? Rachel set down her chopsticks. Yeah, that's what I did. I worked very hard for a very long time. Why? Because I needed to build something that would make a difference. What kind of difference? Rachel glanced at Tom, then back to Jake. The kind of difference that helps sick people get better. My company develops new medicines. Like the medicine that made you better when you were sick. Tom's breath caught. He hadn't realized Jake had picked up on that detail from their conversation on Christmas Eve. Yes, Rachel said quietly. Exactly like that. And that's why you had to leave to make medicine. To get medicine. To make sure I could be healthy for you. Jake thought about this while chewing his lo mein. Okay, that makes sense. Tommy Rodriguez's mom had to go away for a while when she had cancer, but she came back when she was better and now she's fine. That's right, Rachel said, voice thick with emotion. Just like that. Tom felt something shift inside him. This was the narrative they'd use the story that protected Rachel's secrets while giving Jake a framework he could understand. His mother had been sick. She'd gotten better. Now she was back. Simple, clean, and mostly true. After lunch, Jake wanted to show Rachel his science project, a model of the water cycle made from a shoebox and plastic wrap. He'd gotten an A on it, and he was immensely proud. Rachel examined it with the same serious attention she'd given everything else that day. This is really impressive, Jake. Did your dad help you? A little, but I did most of it myself. Dad said I needed to learn to do my own work. Your dad's a smart man. Jake looked between them. Are you guys friends now? We're working on it, Tom said. Good, because I don't want you to fight. Fighting is stupid. Sometimes adults have to disagree about things, Rachel said. But we're not going to fight in front of you. That's a promise. Can I watch TV? Jake asked, already losing interest in the adult conversation. Sure. Remote's on the coffee table. Once Jake was settled with cartoons, Rachel turned to Tom. Thank you for backing me up with the story about being sick. It's not a story. It's the truth just simplified. Still, you could have told him the whole complicated mess. Let me deal with the consequences. I told you I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting him. He doesn't need to know all the details. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Rachel poured them both coffee, her movements practiced and domestic. When will you tell your family? I already started. My sister knows. She'll tell my mother, who'll tell my father, and by tomorrow the whole extended family will be weighing in with opinions. What will they say? That you're selfish, that you abandoned us, that I'm an idiot for letting you back into Jake's life. Rachel flinched. Are they right? About which part? All of it. Tom considered this. I don't know. Ask me again in 6 months when I've had time to figure out whether this is going to work. And if it doesn't work, if you decide Jake's better off without me, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Rachel, if you're going to be in his life, you need to be all in. No disappearing. No running when things get hard. He's already lost you once. He can't survive losing you again. I know. Rachel wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I won't leave. I swear. Don't swear. Just do it. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of cartoons from the other room and Jake's occasional laughter. This was what normal families did on Saturday afternoons. They had piano lessons and Chinese food and lazy hours watching TV together. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. I talked to Dr. Chen this week, Rachel said eventually. Jake's next checkup is in February. She wants to run a full panel, make sure everything's still stable. Okay, I'll make sure he's available. And Tom, if anything shows up, anything at all that suggests the treatment is failing, we'll deal with it, together. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Together. I like the sound of that. Don't read too much into it. I'm talking about Jake's health, not us. I know, but it's still nice to hear. Tom's phone rang. His mother this time, and he knew he couldn't avoid her anymore. I should take this. He stepped onto Rachel's balcony, sliding the door closed behind him. The cold hit him immediately, but he welcomed it. Clarity came easier in the cold. Hi, Mom. Thomas Bennett. Why did I have to hear from your sister that Rachel is back? Because I was processing it before announcing it to the whole family. Processing. You've been processing for 4 days while that woman worms her way back into your life. Mom, don't. Don't what? Don't worry about my son. Don't care that the woman who broke your heart is back. She didn't break my heart. She left to save our son's life. His mother was quiet for a moment. Laura said something about medical treatment. Rachel was sick. Is sick. She has a genetic condition that she passed to Jake. She left to get treatment and make sure Jake could get treatment too. For 8 years. It's a serious condition, Mom. It required serious treatment. And she couldn't tell you, couldn't let you help? It's complicated. That seems to be your word of the week. Tom rubbed his eyes. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm just asking you to be civil to her, for Jake's sake. How is Jake handling all this? He's happy. Happier than I've seen him in years. He has a mother now. That matters to him. His mother sighed. Fine. I'll be civil. But Tom, please be careful. Think about what you're doing before you let her all the way back in. Some things once broken can't be fixed. After he hung up, Tom stood on the balcony for a few more minutes, letting the cold clear his head. His mother was right to worry. He was moving too fast, letting Rachel back into their lives before he'd fully processed what her absence had meant. But every time he tried to slow down to put up walls, he saw Jake smile and lost his resolve. When he went back inside, Rachel was sitting with Jake on the couch reading him a book. It was one of the new ones she'd given him for Christmas, and Jake's head was resting against her shoulder in perfect contentment. Dad, can we stay for dinner? Mom said she'd make spaghetti and meatballs. Tom met Rachel's eyes over Jake's head. She looked uncertain, hopeful, afraid of pushing too hard. Please, Jake added. It's our favorite. I know it is, Rachel said softly. That's why I suggested it. How could Tom say no to that? To his son's happiness, to Rachel's tentative offering of Jake's favorite meal, to the fragile family they were trying to build from broken pieces. Okay, we'll stay for dinner. Jake cheered, and Rachel smiled, and Tom felt the walls around his heart crack just a little bit more. Dinner was easier than lunch had been. They fell into a rhythm, Rachel cooking while Tom set the table, and Jake did his homework at the counter. It felt domestic normal, like this was something they'd been doing for years instead of days. How much is 7 times 8? Jake asked, pencil hovering over his math worksheet. 56. Rachel answered automatically, then looked surprised at herself. Sorry, you're supposed to figure it out on your own. It's okay, I already knew that one. I was just checking. Tom caught Rachel's eye and saw his own surprise reflected back. She'd known the answer without thinking, had responded to Jake's question like she'd been helping with homework all along. Maybe some parts of being a parent were instinctive, hardwired into DNA and heart, regardless of physical presence. Over dinner, Jake told them about the upcoming science fair at school. I want to do something about space, maybe build a model rocket or show how gravity works. Those are both great ideas, Rachel said. If you need any supplies, let me know. I can probably get materials through the company. Really? That would be awesome. Dad, can Mom help with my science fair project? Tom hesitated. Science fair wasn't until March, 2 months away. Agreeing meant committing to Rachel being around for the long term, meant trusting she wouldn't disappear again before then. If she wants to help, that's fine with me. I definitely want to help, Rachel said. I love science fairs. After dinner, Jake fell asleep on Rachel's couch, worn out from piano practice and excitement. Tom covered him with a blanket and decided to let him rest for a bit, rather than making the drive home immediately. Rachel opened a bottle of wine and poured them each a glass. They sat at opposite ends of the couch, Jake sleeping between them, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, they were quiet together without it feeling awkward. This is nice, Rachel said finally. All of us here like this. Don't get used to it. I know this isn't permanent, that you're still figuring out if you can trust me. But let me have tonight. Let me pretend we're a family. Tom looked at his sleeping son, at the woman who'd given birth to him and then given up everything to save him. We are a family, just not the kind we thought we'd be. Is that enough? I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 months. Rachel smiled, sad and hopeful at once. 6 months. I can work with 6 months. They sat there in comfortable silence, drinking wine and watching Jake sleep, and Tom felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years. He felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. And for now, that was enough. 6 months turned into a rhythm they all learned to dance to, though not always gracefully. Saturdays meant piano lessons at Rachel's apartment, followed by lunch and whatever activity Jake wanted to do. Some weeks it was the science museum. Other weeks they'd go to the park, where they'd first reunited Jake running ahead, while Tom and Rachel walked behind, talking about mundane things, like school schedules and doctor's appointments, carefully avoiding the deeper questions that still hung between them. February brought Jake's checkup with Dr. Chen, and Tom found himself sitting in a pediatrician's office with Rachel for the first time in 8 years. The waiting room was decorated with cheerful murals of animals and alphabet letters, and Jake was engrossed in a book about Mars while they waited. "Mr. Bennett, Ms. Martinez, Dr. Chen will see you now." They followed the nurse back Jake between them, and Tom noticed how Rachel's hand found their son's shoulder, steadying herself as much as Jake. Dr. Chen was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and an efficient manner that reminded Tom of Rachel in business mode. "Jake, how are you feeling? Any headaches, dizziness, numbness in your hands or feet?" "Nope. I feel great. I can play piano now. Want to hear about it?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Maybe after we do your exam. Let's check your reflexes first." Tom watched as she went through the standard tests, then moved on to more specialized ones he didn't fully understand. Rachel stood rigid beside him, her hand gripping the edge of the examination table so hard her knuckles were white. "Everything looks excellent," Dr. Chen said finally. "Blood work will take a few days, but physically Jake's in perfect health. The treatment remains stable." Rachel's legs seemed to give out. She sat down hard in the chair Tom had vacated, pressing both hands to her face. Tom saw her shoulders shake and realized she was crying. "Mom!" Jake climbed off the table concerned. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. I'm just happy. Very, very happy." Dr. Chen excused herself to give them privacy, and Tom knelt beside Rachel's chair. "Hey, it's good news. Why are you crying?" "Because I was terrified." Rachel lowered her hands, revealing a tear-stained face. "Every day for 8 years I've been terrified that the treatment would fail. That I'd wake up to a call saying Jake was getting sick, and there was nothing anyone could do. And now—" She looked at their son, who was watching them with worried eyes. "Now Dr. Chen says he's perfect. That everything's working. I can finally breathe." Tom understood then. Rachel had been holding her breath for 8 years, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Jake's health to decline, for her sacrifice to have been for nothing. This appointment wasn't just a checkup. It was vindication. Proof that leaving had been worth it. "Come here, buddy," Tom said to Jake. "Give your mom a hug. She needs it." Jake wrapped his arms around Rachel's neck, and she held him tight, crying harder now. Tom stood and turned away to give them a moment, his own throat tight with emotions he couldn't name. They celebrated with ice cream, Jake's request, even though it was barely 40 degrees outside. They sat in a shop near Dr. Chen's office. Jake with his chocolate cone, and Rachel with vanilla and Tom with coffee, because he'd never liked ice cream much, and Jake talked about the science fair project that was now just 2 weeks away. "I decided on the rocket. Mom helped me order the kit online, and we're going to build it together this weekend. Right, Mom?" "Right. I cleared my whole Saturday for it." "Can Dad help too?" Rachel looked at Tom. "If he wants to." "Of course I want to help," Tom said. "Rockets are cool." Jake beamed. "This is going to be the best science fair project ever. Tommy Rodriguez is just doing a volcano. That's so boring." After ice cream, they walked Jake back to Tom's truck. Rachel had driven separately. She always drove separately, maintaining that clear boundary between her space and theirs. But before they parted, she caught Tom's arm. "Can I talk to you just for a minute?" Tom looked at Jake, who was already buckled in and playing a game on Tom's phone. "Sure. What's up?" Rachel glanced around, then led him a few steps away from the truck. "I want to ask you something, but I don't want you to feel pressured." "That's a great way to start a conversation that's definitely going to pressure me." She almost smiled. Jake's spring break is in a month. I was wondering really, if maybe he could spend part of it with me. At my place, just the two of us. Tom felt his stomach tighten. Like overnight. Like a few nights. 3 or 4 days. I know it's a lot to ask, and you probably need time to think about it. No. Rachel blinked. No, you don't need time. Or no, he can't stay with me. No, he can't stay with you. Not overnight. Not yet. Tom, it's been 6 months. 6 months isn't that long. Not when you were gone for 8 years. Rachel's expression hardened. I'm his mother. Yes, you are. But you're also someone who left him once. I need to know you won't do it again before I let him spend days at a time with you. I told you I wouldn't leave. I promised. You promised before too, when we got married. Those promises didn't hold. The words came out harsher than Tom intended, but he didn't take them back. They'd been dancing around this for 6 months, being polite and careful, but the truth was still there between them, like a wall neither of them could scale. Rachel stepped back as if he'd slapped her. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's how I feel. So what, I'm just supposed to keep waiting, keep proving myself? How long, Tom? How long until you trust me again? I don't know, but I know it's not 6 months. Fine. Rachel's voice was cold now. Fine. We'll do it your way. But don't expect me to keep waiting forever. Don't expect me to keep accepting scraps of time with my own son because you can't let go of the past. She walked to her car without another word, and Tom stood there watching her go, feeling like he'd just made a terrible mistake, but not sure what else he could have done. In the truck, Jake was oblivious to the tension. Is Mom okay? She looked upset. She's fine, just tired from work. Oh, can we get pizza for dinner? That night after Jake was asleep, Tom sat at his kitchen table with a beer and tried to figure out what he was doing. Rachel was right. He was holding on to the past, using it as a shield against the possibility of future hurt. But was that wrong? Was it unreasonable to be cautious to protect his son from potential abandonment? His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. I'm sorry for what I said. You have every right to be careful. I just miss him when he's not around. I miss 8 years of bedtimes and morning routines and all the ordinary moments I can never get back. But I understand. Take all the time you need. Tom stared at the message for a long time before typing back, I'm sorry too, for being harsh. You're doing everything right. I'm just scared. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, scared of what? Tom's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could say he was scared she'd leave again. Scared Jake would get hurt. Scared of disrupting the careful life they'd built. All of those things were true. But the deeper truth, the one he'd been avoiding for 6 months, was simpler and more complicated at once. Scared of letting myself care about you again, he typed, and getting destroyed when it falls apart. The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for a long time. Tom watched them, his heart beating too fast, wondering if he'd just ruined everything by being honest. Finally, her response came. What if it doesn't fall apart? What if it does? Then we deal with it. Together. Like we should have done 8 years ago. Tom set down his phone without responding. He didn't have an answer to that. Didn't know if he was ready to take that risk to open himself up to the possibility of Rachel not just as Jake's mother, but as someone in his own life again. The next Saturday, they built Jake's rocket in Rachel's living room, spreading newspapers over the expensive carpet, and working from instructions that seemed designed to be confusing. Jake was in charge of painting, carefully applying silver and red stripes, while Tom and Rachel handled the more delicate assembly. Hand me the smaller screwdriver, Rachel said, squinting at a tiny screw. Tom passed it to her, and their fingers brushed. It was nothing they'd touched dozens of times over the past months, but this time Tom felt it differently. Felt the warmth of her hand, the familiarity of working beside her, the easy companionship they'd had before everything went wrong. Thanks, Rachel said, not looking at him. They worked in silence for a while, Jake humming while he painted, and Tom found himself remembering other projects they'd done together. The bookshelf they'd built for their first apartment, arguing over instructions and laughing when it ended up slightly crooked. The crib they'd assembled when Rachel was 8 months pregnant, her directing from the couch because she couldn't bend over anymore. All those ordinary moments of building a life together. "Do you remember the crib?" Tom asked before he could stop himself. Rachel's hands stilled. "Every day. I remember you put it together backward the first time, and we had to take it all apart and start over. You laughed so hard you cried. Said if I couldn't handle assembly instructions, how was I going to handle fatherhood? And you said fatherhood didn't come with instructions, so you'd have to figure it out as you went along." Rachel finally looked at him. "You did figure it out. You were right. We figured it out together. Those first 6 months before." Tom stopped, unsure how to finish. "Before I left." Rachel set down the screwdriver. "Tom, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "If you'd known the truth 8 years ago, if I'd told you about Jake's condition and Dr. Morrison and the treatment, would you have let me go?" Tom considered this carefully. "No, I would have insisted on going with you. Or finding another way. Or something. And Jake would probably be in a wheelchair right now. Or worse." Tom ran a hand through his hair. "I get it, Rachel. I understand why you did what you did. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less." "I know. But maybe understanding is a start." "Dad. Mom. Look. I'm done painting." They turned to see Jake holding up the rocket body, now decorated with elaborate stripes and stars, and what appeared to be a self-portrait of Jake waving from one of the windows. "That's amazing, buddy," Tom said. "You're very talented," Rachel added. "This is going to be the best rocket at the science fair." They spent the rest of the afternoon finishing the assembly, and by the time they were done, Jake had a functioning model rocket that he was absurdly proud of. Rachel took dozens of pictures, and Tom found himself in several of them, the three of them posed together like a real family. "Can we test launch it?" Jake asked. "Please." "We need to wait for a clear day with no wind," Rachel said. "But yes, we can definitely test it before the science fair." "When tomorrow?" "The weather report says tomorrow's going to be rainy. How about next Saturday?" "That's so far away." "It's 1 week," Tom said. "You can wait 1 week." Jake pouted but accepted this. After dinner, tacos, another of Jake's favorites that Rachel had somehow remembered, Tom started gathering their things to leave. But Jake had fallen asleep on the couch again, a pattern that was becoming familiar. "He does that a lot here," Tom observed. "Falls asleep." "He feels safe," Rachel said quietly. "That's what Dr. Chen told me. Children sleep easily in places where they feel secure." Tom looked at his sleeping son, at the contentment on Jake's face, and felt something shift in his chest. Jake did feel safe here. With Rachel. Despite everything. Despite the years of absence, Jake had bonded with his mother completely and without reservation. Maybe it was time Tom tried to do the same. "About spring break," Tom said. "I've been thinking about what you asked." Rachel looked up sharply. "And 2 nights. That's what I'm comfortable with right now. 2 nights at your place during spring break, and I want daily check-ins. Phone calls where I talk to Jake directly, not just texts." 2 nights. Daily calls. I can do that." Rachel's eyes were bright. "Thank you, Tom. Thank you for trusting me. I'm trying. It's hard, but I'm trying." "That's all I can ask." Tom carried Jake to the truck, and Rachel walked them down to the parking garage. Before Tom could pull away, she knocked on his window. He rolled it down. "I meant what I said. In my text. About, what if it doesn't fall apart?" Tom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Rachel, I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I'm just saying I'm here. When you're ready. If you're ever ready, I'll be here." She stepped back before he could respond, and Tom drove home with those words echoing in his head. When you're ready. If you're ever ready. The question was whether he'd ever be ready. Whether he could ever trust enough to risk his heart again. Whether the woman Rachel had become was someone he could love the way he'd loved the woman she'd been. 2 weeks later, Jake's rocket won third place at the science fair. Tom and Rachel both attended, standing together near the back of the gymnasium, while Jake proudly displayed his project to anyone who would look. Other parents noticed them, did double takes, whispered to each other. Tom could guess what they were saying. That's Jake's mom. Where has she been? I heard she just came back. Poor Tom, raising that boy alone all these years. Let them talk, let them judge. Tom was tired of caring what other people thought. He's so happy, Rachel said, watching Jake demonstrate the launch mechanism to a group of younger kids. Look at him, he's thriving. He is. You've been good for him. For both of us, maybe. Rachel turned to him. Really? Really? These past 6 months they've been good. Complicated but good. Tom, I need to tell you something. The serious tone in her voice made Tom's stomach drop. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But the company we're expanding, opening a new research facility in Seattle. The board wants me to oversee the setup personally. Tom's chest tightened. For how long? 6 months, maybe more. I'd need to be there at least 3 days a week, sometimes full weeks at a time. So you're leaving again? No, I'm not leaving. Seattle's a 3-hour flight. I can commute. And when I need to be there for longer stretches, I'll fly back for weekends. I'll never miss more than 5 days without seeing Jake. But you're still choosing work over him. Rachel's eyes flashed. I'm choosing to build something that matters, that saves lives, that might save more children like Jake someday. Is that really so terrible? No, it's just familiar. They stared at each other, all the old wounds reopening, and Tom realized this was the pattern. Rachel would always choose the greater good over the immediate need, would always sacrifice the personal for the professional. It was who she was, who she'd become during those 8 years of building her empire. The question was whether Tom could live with that. Whether he could be with someone who saw the world in terms of numbers, saved, rather than individual hearts. When do you leave? Tom asked. 2 weeks, right after spring break. Convenient timing. You get your 2 nights with Jake, then you're gone. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's how it feels. Jake came running over, blue ribbon in hand. 3rd place. Did you see? I got 3rd place. Tom hugged him tight. I saw, buddy. I'm so proud of you. Mom, did you see? I saw. You were amazing. The best rocket scientist in the whole fair. Jake beamed, oblivious to the tension between his parents. Can we celebrate with ice cream, please? They went for ice cream. The 3 of them crammed into a booth at the same shop they'd visited after Dr. Chen's appointment. Jake talked non-stop about the science fair and the judge's comments, and how next year he wanted to build something even bigger. Tom and Rachel made appropriate responses but didn't look at each other. Later, after they'd dropped Jake off at Tom's apartment and Tom had returned to his truck, he found a note tucked under his windshield wiper. Rachel's handwriting. I'm not choosing work over Jake. I'm not choosing work over you. I'm choosing to be who I am, someone who can help people while also being a mother, and maybe someday, if you'll let me, something more to you. I can be both. I know you don't believe that yet, but I'll prove it, however long it takes. Tom sat in his truck reading and rereading those words. She was right that he didn't believe it. Didn't believe she could be both the CEO flying to Seattle and the mother showing up for soccer games. Didn't believe she could build an empire and a family at the same time. But maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was letting fear make him small, make him see only the ways things could fail instead of the ways they might succeed. Tom pulled out his phone and called her. Hello. Rachel sounded surprised. I read your note. And I think you're probably right. I think I am being unfair judging you for being ambitious and successful when those are things I'd admire in anyone else. Rachel was quiet for a moment. But I'm still scared. Still waiting for you to choose something else over us. I won't. You don't know that. Life happens. Emergencies come up. Sometimes we have to make choices we never wanted to make. You're right. I can't promise nothing will ever go wrong or that I'll never have to miss something important. But I can promise I'll always come back. Always. No matter what. Tom closed his eyes, leaning his head against the steering wheel. I want to believe you. Then try. Just try. That's all I'm asking. Okay, Tom heard himself say. Okay, I'll try. Spring break came, and Tom packed Jake's bag with shaking hands. 2 nights shouldn't feel like such a big deal. People left their kids with babysitters for longer than that. But this was different. This was trusting Rachel completely. Trusting she'd take care of their son. Trusting she wouldn't disappear. You have your phone? Tom asked for the 3rd time. Yes, Dad. And my toothbrush, and my pajamas, and Mr. Bear, and my tablet, and everything else you already checked. Just making sure. Rachel arrived at 6 o'clock, exactly punctual as always. She'd brought groceries for the meals she planned to make, and she went over the schedule with Tom in detail. Pizza tonight, pancakes for breakfast, the aquarium tomorrow, then dinner at her place before returning Jake on Wednesday afternoon. And you'll call tonight before bed? Tom asked. I'll call tonight before bed, and tomorrow after the aquarium, and Wednesday morning, as many times as you need. Tom knelt down in front of Jake. You be good for your mom, okay? Listen to her and follow her rules. I will, Dad. Stop worrying. I'll be fine. I know you will. Tom hugged him tight. I just love you very much. I love you too. Now let go. You're squishing me. Tom watched them leave, Rachel carrying Jake's overnight bag and Jake chattering about the aquarium, and felt his heart leave with them. He stood at the window of his apartment long after they'd driven away, staring at the empty parking lot and trying not to panic. His phone rang at 8:30. Rachel video call. Someone wants to say goodnight. Jake's face filled the screen. Hi, Dad. We had pizza and watched a movie, and now I'm in my pajamas. Mom set up the guest room really cool. There's a telescope by the window and everything. That sounds great, buddy. Did you brush your teeth? Yes. Mom made me. She's very strict about teeth. Tom heard Rachel laugh in the background. Dental hygiene is important. They talked for 10 more minutes before Jake's yawning got too frequent to ignore. After they hung up, Tom sat in his empty apartment and realized he'd been holding his breath the entire call. Jake was fine. Rachel was fine. Everything was fine. So why did Tom feel like his world was hanging by a thread? His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. He's asleep. Went down easy after his long day. Thank you for trusting me with this. It means everything. Sweet dreams, Tom. Tom typed back. Sweet dreams. See you Wednesday. Then, before he could second-guess himself, he added, Maybe we could have coffee sometime. Just the 2 of us. Talk about things. 3 dots appeared immediately. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. Tom set down his phone and allowed himself to smile. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust restored. But it was a step forward, and maybe that was enough. Maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay after all.